After 10 years of silence, I opened the door to his secret house and discovered the incredible treasure of my father's truth. Jenna's fingers trembled as she turned the rusty doorknob, and the old wood creaked open, revealing the dust-filled air of her childhood home. Memories came rushing back like a tide, the echoes of her father's laughter mingling with the scent of linseed oil that still clung to the walls. Each speck of dust felt like a fragment of her past, whispering stories of both beauty and grief. How could a space that cradled her formative years now swell with such despair? With each step inside, her heart wrestled with a weight of nostalgia that mingled with resentment. She had spent years burying the memories of the man who had once painted the world for her, only to abandon her for the sake of a family tradition she could never understand. She wandered into the old studio, where framed canvases, draped in dust, told tales of ambition and sacrifice. Jenna's mind raced. Would her father have painted these if he had known he would never pursue his dreams? The thought lodged itself like a blade in her chest, twisting and turning, leaving a residue of guilt. Overwhelmed, she stumbled upon a stack of letters, yellowed with time. As she unfolded the first one, it became clear that her father had poured his soul into them, revealing not just his art, but the struggles that had remained hidden beneath the surface. He wrote of the fame he rejected, his wishes subdued by family loyalty. Each letter ignited a conflagration of emotions, fury for his choices, longing for the connection they never had, and a haunting realization of her own negated aspirations. Before she could process the implications of these discoveries, news broke through her thoughts. A local gallery was preparing to showcase her father's works, a bittersweet opportunity that felt more like a curse. Would they honor his true intentions, or simply commodify his legacy? Deep-seated fears churned in her gut. She couldn't bear the idea of having his dreams captured in a frame, losing the essence that made them significant. If she stepped in to protect the legacy, would she ignore her own artistic voice? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Determination locked in her chest, Jenna questioned her worth in this art world that seemed to shun vulnerability. The gallery director's words echoed in her mind. This is your father's chance for redemption. Outsiders would never understand the subtleties of her father's desires, how each stroke was infused with his own relinquished dreams. The pressure increased like a fist tightening around her throat. With the exhibition looming, she found herself paralyzed in front of a blank canvas in her father's old studio. The scent of turpentine mixed with the weight of impending decisions hung thick in the air. What if she surrendered to family ties and, in doing so, suffocated her own creative potential? Anger surged through her veins as she fought back tears. This wasn't merely a dilemma. It was a battlefield of identity and legacy. Jenna's fingers hovered over the brush as she stood at the brink, ready to either shatter the chains of expectation or repeat the legacy she had spent a decade trying to escape. All that remained was a moment, a raw, defining choice that could reshape not only her father's memory, but her entire existence. Would she succumb to the fears that haunted her, or would she finally embrace her own voice, regardless of the cost? The torment simmered, and uncertainty dripped like paint from her brush, waiting for the moment that could alter everything. Jenna inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the bitter scent of turpentine and memories. Trapped between her father's legacy and her ambition, the blank canvas loomed over her like a precipice. What kind of artist would she be if, in an attempt to honor him, she extinguished her own creative fire? Hesitation gnawed at her, a persistent whisper reminding her of the years lost to silence and submission. But as she reached for the brush, something stirred within her, a flicker of rebellious hope. She dipped the brush into a swirl of deep crimson, its bold hue promising power against the overwhelming clouds of doubt. As her hand swept across the canvas, She felt the tension in her chest begin to dissipate. Each stroke became a catharsis, connecting her to the latent creativity she had long buried beneath layers of resentment. Suddenly, the door burst open, and in walked Anna, a childhood friend who had been a witness to Jenna's struggles. Surprise flickered across Anna's face, quickly morphing into concern as she crossed the threshold. "Jenna, I heard about the gallery show," she said softly, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" Jenna stopped mid-stroke, frustration bubbling to the surface. "How can I be okay, Anna? My father's art is being put on display without any understanding of who he truly was or who I am. It feels like a betrayal." Anna nodded, empathy etched in her features. "But maybe it's a chance for you to redefine that narrative. You have something to say about his work too. What if you use this opportunity not just to connect with him, but to express yourself?" The weight of Anna's words pressed against Jenna's consciousness, amplifying the turmoil within her. Could she find a way to intertwine their stories? The mere idea sent shivers down her spine, igniting a passion she thought had been extinguished. "I don't even know how to do that," Jenna replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I fail? What if I reveal his truth but ruin my own in the process?" "Failure is part of growth," Anna encouraged, her eyes shining with conviction. "You've got the talent, Jenna. Just remember, you're not bound to repeat his mistakes. What if you created something that honors him while still allowing you to be free?" In that moment, clarity pierced through the fog of uncertainty that had enveloped Jenna for so long. It wasn't enough to merely protect her father's legacy. She needed to incorporate her own voice into the narrative. The art they created must reflect both their journeys, the dreams realized and dreams deferred. With renewed determination, Jenna began layering colors on the canvas, each wash telling a different story, each stroke a testament to resilience and creativity. She worked tirelessly, the studio enveloped in her passion, and an unspoken promise to herself she would not be overshadowed by her father's choices, nor would she let guilt dictate her direction. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across the room, Jenna finished her piece, stepping back to analyze her work. It was bold, vibrant, and raw, a reflection of both her pain and her hope. In that moment, she realized her father's truth had now become a part of her own, blending grief with aspiration. But as she turned her gaze back to the stack of letters, an unsettling thought clawed its way into her mind. If her father had regrets beyond the canvas, what other hidden truths lay waiting to be unearthed? The gallery beckoned her with both opportunity and dread, and the path she had carved felt like a mere beginning. She was ready to confront whatever lay ahead, but the shadows of her father's choices loomed large, ready to reveal themselves in unexpected ways. The time had come to face the underlying conflicts both within herself and the legacy she inherited. Would she expose those buried truths, or would they consume her? Jenna stood before her newly completed painting, her breath hitching as an unexpected swell of emotion washed over her. The canvas pulsated with the colors of her struggles and triumphs, and although she felt a heartening connection to her father through this work, doubts gnawed at her. Would this piece genuinely honor his legacy, or was it just a way to mask her own artistic voice? She needed clarity. It was time to explore the strands that connected her to her father, to traverse the hidden pathways of his life that had nurtured her artistry but also constrained it. The letters, scattered across her workspace, beckoned. Each envelope held potential revelations, possibly even the answers she sought about his unspoken regrets. A mixture of eagerness and dread stirred within her as she picked up the first letter. The edges were worn, soft with the passage of time. As she unfolded the brittle paper, Jenna's heart raced. The familiar scrawl introduced her to a side of her father she had never fully understood, a man enveloped in contradictions, held captive by his own ambitions. She edged into the depths of his thoughts, feeling both the tenderness of his reflections and the weight of his struggles. Words like disappointment and a longing for freedom leapt from the page, and Jenna felt a shudder of recognition, the echoes of her unexpressed fears. Another letter detailed a missed opportunity, a job offer that could have changed everything for him. What if he had taken that leap? Was it possible for her to find the courage he had not? A flicker of determination flickered within her. This was her chance not to replicate his mistakes, but to learn from them and redefine what it meant to pursue her own art. Suddenly, the familiar chiming of Anna's laughter floated in from the other room, and Jenna felt a grounding pulse of reassurance. Their friendship had always imbued her with perspective, and she needed Anna now more than ever to share her discoveries, to dissect the fragile threads that connected her past and future. Wanting the comfort of another voice, she rushed into the living room. "Hey, you're not going to believe what I found," Jenna said, her excitement bubbling over. Anna looked up, her expression curious but serious, as if sensing the gravity behind Jenna's words. "What is it?" Anna inquired, perking up in her seat. "I found letters. My dad wrote so much thoughts I never knew. He felt trapped, Anna. There were opportunities he didn't take because of fear," Jenna shared, her voice vibrating with urgency. "I wonder if he would been prouder if he'd followed his dreams instead of being so consumed by them." Jenna could see the gears turning in Anna's mind. "Maybe you're meant to address that in your work. Whisper that truth into your art. You have his history in your hands. It could lead to your breakthrough." The thought sent shivers down Jenna's spine. What if this could not only set her father free, but also liberate her creative spirit? Her resolve began to crystallize again, pushing through the fear that had long dictated her choices. But just as that spark was igniting a plan within her, an unsettling notion crept in, the realization that there were probably more letters yet to be explored, more facets of her father's existence to face openly. The shadows of his choices pressed closer, as if challenging her to confront even deeper truths. Jenna's pulse quickened. The act of revealing his truths could lead to an understanding she desperately needed and a confrontation that loomed ahead. Would she face the pain of his past to carve out freedom for her future? As the weight of these questions settled in her chest, Jenna recognized the urgency to uncover the hidden narratives that might redefine her artistic journey. What truths lay in those unopened envelopes, and how would they shape the artist she was yet to become? With newfound determination, Jenna moved toward the letters, ready to delve deeper, unaware of how each revelation might unravel or fortify the intricate fabric of her identity. Jenna inhaled deeply as she sat down at her cluttered workspace, the accumulation of old letters promising both answers and questions. Crumpled notes and coffee-stained pages surrounded her, a tapestry of her father's unfulfilled dreams and hidden vulnerabilities. This was a moment of confrontation not just with his past, but with her own. Picking up another letter, she felt a tremor of anticipation. The envelope was slightly thicker than the others, suggesting not only words but the weight of unexpressed feelings. This could be the one that brought clarity. Her hands hesitated, then deftly tore through the fragile paper. As she read, Jenna's heart twisted uncomfortably. Here was a haunting admission, a letter addressed to a mentor he had deeply respected, confessing the profound fear of inadequacy that had plagued him throughout his career. "I see the potential in others, but fear I'll never realize my own." One line resonated painfully. Jenna's thoughts spiraled. How many times had she felt the same? The echoes of her father's insecurities reverberated within her, creating an emotional tapestry of shared doubts. She realized the enormity of the legacy he had left her. It was not merely about art or unfulfilled dreams, but a mirror reflecting her own hesitations and an invitation to confront them. "That's it," she murmured to herself. "This isn't just a struggle. It's mine too." With this revelation, Jenna's fingers burned with inspiration as if her father's hand was guiding hers. Each subsequent letter unveiled a layer: regrets about choices not made, passions stifled by societal expectations, and emotional confessions that stripped away the pedestal she had put him on. The further she dove into his thoughts, the more she could see his complexity, a breathtaking meld of vulnerability and tenacity that, as intimidating as it was, inspired her. Jenna's resolve began to crystallize again. If he could express his fears publicly, why couldn't I? She whispered. It was a reckoning, one that demanded she not only confront the artistic path ahead of her, but also redefine what it meant to be brave. The thrill of discovery surged through her, intertwined with the urgency to translate these revelations onto the canvas. But then, a shadow flickered past her mind, the fear of exposing herself too vulnerably through her art. As sincere as her endeavor felt, what if it was too raw? What if the audience couldn't connect with her, echoing the fear her father had felt? Doubt threatened to cloud the adrenaline of inspiration she'd begun to cultivate. Taking a moment, she closed her eyes. With every deep breath, she fought against the uncertainty. The stakes felt monumental now. This art was not just reflective, but lived experience, an extension of her father's unvoiced inner battles melded with her own. The art must tell the truth, she reminded herself. As she glanced at the canvas awaiting her brushstrokes, Jenna understood she was standing at the threshold of something incredible. Each letter peeled away the layers of her father's fears, gripping her as tightly as her past had. It was time to uncover the pain and the freedom inherent in such exposure, to knit together her father's unfulfilled dreams with her own vibrant aspirations. Rising to her feet, Jenna felt a new urgency to act. She would integrate what she was learning, channeling not just the despair but the hope that had welled up from the depths of those letters. Perhaps this was the liberation they both craved. Yet, as she turned to gather her supplies, the weight of another unopened letter loomed in her mind. What more could it contain? What else about her father remained unfathomable? The questions flooded back, each one tinged with the promise of deeper understanding and the possibility of newfound purpose. Jenna paused, the unopened letter trembling slightly in her hands as anticipation thrummed in her chest. This decision would be pivotal. Did she dare reveal the last hidden truth? The moment of reckoning felt just within reach, waiting to be uncovered. Jenna's fingers brushed the edge of the unopened letter, its crispness a stark contrast to the chaotic mess of emotions swirling inside her. The anticipation was electric, but so too was the dread. What if this letter revealed something that shattered her newfound perspective? Could it undo the courage she felt in those moments of clarity? She took a deep breath, needing to anchor herself in the present. Just read it, she urged herself softly, the ticking clock in the background reminding her that time was unrelenting. She pulled a soft knife from her desk, its blade perfectly designed to slice through paper. As she carefully worked the envelope open, Jenna felt a wave of exhilaration and fear of fusion that sent shivers down her spine. She could sense the echoes of her father's presence swelling in the room around her, a phantom voice hovering just beyond the threshold of comprehension. The letter unfolded with ease, revealing not only words, but a weight of emotions that felt tangible. As she read, the tone was confessional, a private conversation with herself, but penned for her eyes now. Her father spoke of his long-standing battle with regret and the shadows of self-doubt that taunted him even in his successes. I held so tightly to my expectations that I forgot to see value in the journey itself. One line pierced through her defenses. Suddenly, Jenna's heart raced for a different reason. It wasn't just about her father's feelings. It was about her relationship with her own aspirations. The lines began to blur between his fears and those she'd harbored for herself. She had always pushed for perfection in her work, feeling she had to uphold some legacy instead of forging her own path. What if she could instead embrace the unpredictable beauty of imperfection? A rush of inspiration surged through her. The art must reflect the journey, she whispered to herself, words echoing the lessons her father was now helping to teach her beyond the grave. If he could own his flaws and express them openly, then she could certainly share her artistic vulnerabilities. Perhaps her father hadn't merely left these letters for her own exploration. Perhaps they served as a guide urging her to embrace authenticity rather than mask her emotions with a veneer of success. Writing had always been her refuge, but now it felt like the gateway to freedom. Determined, Jenna decided to paint her way through this revelation, letting her brush be the vessel for her father's unfiltered voice as well as her own. She would convey the richness of her experiences, the failures, the fear, and the eventual steps towards embracing her true artistic vision. Yet, in that moment of clarity, doubt crept back in, just like before. What if this newfound bravery wasn't enough? What if her art resonated differently than she hoped, just as her father feared? No longer an artistic drill sergeant pushing her to achieve unreachable standards, Jenna's inner voice shifted to a supportive mentor, gently encouraging her to step beyond the veil of fear. You're crafting a narrative, not for others but for yourself. Gathering her supplies, she felt emboldened, but just as she prepared to paint, a nagging thought paused her hand. That last line from her father's letter lingered in her mind. Sometimes, the choice to move forward isn't the easiest path. It's the most rewarding. What did it mean for her path? What sacrifices would she face? Taylor, her longtime friend and a fellow artist who had always been the more successful of the two, plagued her thoughts. Their discussions had often hovered around ambition, but manipulation of success painted their relationship in shades of rivalry. Would opening herself up through her art jeopardize that friendship? Contemplation hung thick in the air as she stared at the canvas. Could she find the courage to reveal both her vulnerabilities and the struggles she faced internally and with others around her? The stakes were rising, but Jenna felt an intense pull toward that truth, toward the narrative she was beginning to construct a narrative. Intertwined with her father's legacy, Jenna dipped her brush into vibrant hues, saturated with fear, hope, and years of excess. A singular thought ignited in her mind. The more genuine she could be, the more liberated she would feel. But as she began to paint, a sudden ping from her phone disrupted her concentration. An email from Taylor flashed on the screen, its subject line ominous and electrifying. "We need to talk." Each word felt like a new challenge opening before her, a question of whether she could navigate her personal truths while potentially risking her friendship. What awaited her beyond those words? Did she dare confront the impending collision of their ambitions? Jenna's heart raced as she stared at her phone, the words of Taylor's email pulling her from the depths of contemplation back to the reality she faced. The message felt like a challenge, a tether to her past that threatened to unravel her newfound resolve. What could Taylor possibly want to discuss? The urgency in the email prompted a sense of apprehension. Countless memories of their shared ambitions flashed through her mind, their friendly rivalry blending into moments of fear and uncertainty. Setting down her brush, Jenna took a deep breath and steeled herself for the conversation looming ahead. She sensed that confronting Taylor could either serve as a catalyst for her personal growth or send her spiraling back to a constricted view of success. The promise of vulnerability, the chance to express the artistic freedom she yearned for, suddenly felt precarious. With a shaking hand, she typed a quick response. "Sure, when and where?" Sending it felt like stepping onto a precipice, the ground beneath her thoughts shifting beneath the weight of possibility. What if this discussion opened an old wound? What if it pushed her further away from her true self? She forced herself to focus on the canvas before her, but the blank surface taunted her. Armed with the urgency of Taylor's email, Jenna picked up her brush again, determined to channel her swirling emotions into art. Each stroke was an exploration of her reality, splashes of color representing her vulnerabilities, her triumphs, and the shadows of her father's legacy. As she painted, she lost herself in the intensity of the colors. The scarlet red became a representation of her passion both for art and the messiness of relationships. Deep indigo swirled in patches, embodying the uncertainty of her future and the shadows of past decisions. Each layer of paint transformed her hesitations into something tangible. It was the first time she no longer felt tied to perfection but rather embraced the beauty of creation itself. Yet as vibrant hues took form on the canvas, her mind spiraled back to the impending conversation. Taylor had a way of validating personal ambition that felt both inspiring and suffocating. Perhaps she had let Taylor's successes define her own art, rather than view them as a different path of expression. This could be the moment to reclaim her narrative. With every brushstroke, Jenna recognized that the foundation of her art needed to shift from outside validation to inner truth. She resolved to confront not just Taylor, but also the expectations that shaped her perception. Lost in her thoughts and the meditative process of art, Jenna finally glanced at the clock. Time had slipped away from her. The sky outside had shifted, evening casting a soft glow that echoed her newfound clarity. She had no choice but to meet Taylor soon, and that thought stirred both excitement and anxiety within her. The idea of opening up, exposing parts of herself that often remained hidden, felt daunting. Yet, this could be the gateway for her true transformation. She felt the momentum building inside her. There was no room for fear in this journey she was embracing. Suddenly, determined to craft the core of her message, she walked back to her desk and opened her sketchpad. This time, instead of detail, she began jotting down thoughts as if they were lines in a poem about courage and vulnerability, threading together her narrative. What was she prepared to reveal? What would she even want from this conversation? As she pondered her vulnerabilities, something struck her. A missed opportunity to embrace the lesson her father had imparted about valuing the journey. If Taylor and she shared a common space of artistry, tapping into their friendship might unlock new avenues of understanding. Their destinies didn't need to be adversarial. They could be collaborative, resolved, and invigorated by this notion. She took a moment to breathe before finishing her thoughts, her reflection poised at the precipice of change. But just as the pieces started falling into place, another ping from her phone interrupted her, an incoming call from Taylor. Would this be the moment she embraced a conversation that could shift everything? With lingering uncertainty, she answered it, her heart pounding against her ribcage. The voice on the other end was calm yet charged, setting the stage for the intense exchange to come. What truths would surface? As they spoke, Jenna sensed that the path of self-discovery might be far more intricate than she ever imagined. The conversation with Taylor surged through Jenna like a jolt of electricity. Each word she exchanged heightened her awareness, a reminder of the intricate dance between ambition and personal truth. Taylor had a tendency to push, to challenge, but this time felt different, charged with an air of vulnerability that Jenna had not anticipated. "I never thought you'd respond," Taylor said, her voice tinged with surprise and something like relief. The softer tone melted some of Jenna's apprehension, replacing it with curiosity. "Why now?" Jenna managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady. A silence hung between them, weighted with the unsaid elements of their shared history. Taylor finally sighed. "Because I've been reflecting on our journeys. I think we both found our paths but lost sight of each other along the way. I miss that us working side by side." Jenna felt a tightness in her chest. She had spent so much time focusing on the competition, the fear of not measuring up, that she had neglected the friendships that once inspired her. "I've been feeling that too," she admitted, her voice softer now. "I think I've lost sight of what I wanted." Her thoughts began racing, fueled by the momentum of their conversation. This exchange could be a foundation for something new, an opportunity to reconcile her past conflicts with her artistic vision. If Taylor truly meant it, perhaps she could share how deeply her father's expectations had influenced her art, leading to the very insecurities that held her back. "Actually, can we meet in person?" Jenna asked, surprising even herself with the assertiveness in her voice. "Of course. I'd love that," Taylor responded, genuine warmth evident in her tone. They agreed to meet at a small cafe that Jenna once loved but had shunned due to its memories. However, now it felt like the perfect place for a fresh start, a location that could symbolize new beginnings. As they ended the call, Jenna was left with a flurry of emotions. She was excited but anxious, aware that this meeting held the potential to either empower her rediscovered sense of self or reinforce her fears. She returned to her canvas, the brush now feeling heavier in her grip as a range of thoughts collided. She yearned for progress in her art, but she realized this would demand a certain rawness that she had been reluctant to explore. Sinking deep into reflection, she began to see the value of transparency, not just with Taylor, but with herself. How often had she hidden behind layers of perfectionism or intimidation? Jenna decided right then that she wouldn't hold back. This conversation was an opportunity to confront the root of her insecurities. She reached for vivid yellow paint, a visual symbol of her intentions. As she applied broad strokes to the canvas, she let herself imagine the strength and confidence that could arise from opening herself up. Hours later, she finally stepped back to admire her work. The canvas was alive with emotion. It represented her journey, filled with both jagged edges and luminous elements that reflected her triumphs and trials. Yet, as much as she reveled in this cathartic release, a question nagged at the back of her mind: could she honor her father's legacy without letting its shadow obscure her own identity? Would confronting Taylor help her redefine that legacy as one of empowerment, not restriction? The day of their meeting was characterized by a strange blend of determination and trepidation. Jenna dressed deliberately, carefully selecting pieces that represented her individuality rather than her insecurities. As she walked towards the cafe, she felt the weight of her past trailing behind her, but within her, a budding flame was igniting. Arriving early, she ordered a coffee and sat down, fingers drumming anxiously on the table. No matter how many times she rehearsed what she hoped to say, doubts still loomed large. This was more than just a conversation, it was a reckoning. Just as her thoughts began a new spiral of uncertainty, the door swung open, and in strode Taylor, her presence asserting a mix of nostalgia and intrigue. What truths would unfold during this encounter? As their eyes connected, Jenna braced herself for a dialogue that promised to either dismantle her fears entirely or force her to confront them head-on. The time had come to face not only the past, but also the path her future would take. Would this be Jenna finally stepping out of Taylor's shadow to reveal her own light? Jenna took a deep breath as Taylor approached, her heart racing with an erratic rhythm that mirrored the torrent of emotions inside her. A dozen questions swirled in her mind, but she forced herself to remain grounded. Taylor's eyes sparkled, a mix of familiarity and an uncertainty that mirrored Jenna's own. This moment had been a long time coming, yet now that it was here, everything felt amplified and significant. "Hey," Taylor greeted, her voice soft but carrying an undercurrent of eagerness. "Thanks for suggesting this." "Of course. Thank you for reaching out," Jenna replied, surprised at how steady her own voice sounded despite the internal chaos. They settled into an intimate corner of the cafe, the vibrant decor contrasting starkly with Jenna's internal gray clouds of doubt. It had been years since they last shared a space like this, their previous conversations laced with competition and expectation. Now, Jenna could feel the weight of a different kind of anticipation in the air, one that came with vulnerability and honesty. "So, how have you been?" Taylor initiated before quickly adding, "I mean, really?" Jenna hesitated, grappling with the urge to provide a rehearsed answer about being busy with her art, justifying her pursuits as successful while neglecting the emotional toll they took. Instead, she opted for authenticity. "Honestly, I've felt lost lately. I've been trying to balance my work with everything else." The last word hung in the air, shrouded in the complexity of her family dynamics, especially her father's expectations. Taylor nodded, her eyes softening. "I get that. We grew up under similar pressures. I've been wrestling with my own identity in this creative landscape too." Hearing this, Jenna felt a flicker of connection ignite. It was a reminder that the journey of an artist is seldom solitary, even in a world that seemed to pit them against each other. Deep down, they both sought to define their own narratives. "What do you want for your art?" Taylor asked pointedly, her gaze searching for a moment. Jenna was caught off guard, unmoored by the directness of the question. Yet, the simplicity made her realize she had been evading this inquiry for far too long. The truth settled in her bones. She wanted her art to tell her story, not her father's, not anyone else's. It needed to speak to her struggles, her passions, and above all, her identity. "I want it to be real," she finally confessed. "I want to embrace the messy, the painful. I want it to reflect who I am, not who I think I should be." Taylor smiled, a glimmer of understanding crossing her face. "Then let us rediscover that together." Their shared vulnerabilities started drawing the contours of a new chapter. Jenna felt a sense of accountability. Perhaps it was time she opened up not just to Taylor but to herself. The realization that her art could embody her true essence lit a fire within her. She envisioned vibrant pieces that reflected the complexities she had often shied away from. As the conversation flowed, Jenna began to delve deeper, revealing the insecurities that had tied her down, the fear of falling short, the dread of not living up to her father's legacy. Each confession cracked open a new layer of self-awareness, peeling back the facade of perfection that she had so carefully cultivated over the years. Suddenly, Jenna felt a shift within her. She remembered the messy strokes on her canvas and the cathartic release they symbolized. Perhaps it was not about stepping out of shadows, but rather embracing the light and dark she carried. "I didn't know how to honor my father's influence without losing myself," she admitted quietly, her eyes shimmering with tears that spoke of uncharted territory. "But maybe learning to blend my vision with his is a way forward." Taylor reached across the table, a gesture of solidarity. "I think that's beautiful. Vivid expressions of both your stories can coexist, Jenna. That's not a burden. It's a gift." The warmth of this exchange began weaving a new sense of purpose and clarity. What once felt like a jagged sewing of disjointed pieces was now taking shape. But as the cafe buzzed around them, another flicker of doubt invaded her thoughts. Was she truly ready to embrace the ambiguity of her journey? Could she move into her art with this newfound perspective, or was fear still tethering her? As if sensing her turmoil, Taylor leaned in. "This is just the beginning. Let us commit to exploring this further together." Jenna nodded, her heart racing once more, but this time, it was laced with anticipation. The path ahead seemed daunting, yet rich with promise. After years of silence, she had opened the door to both her past and a potential future filled with creativity and honesty. Would she allow herself to walk through that door, fully asserting who she was to the world? The challenge loomed large, but for the first time in a long while, she felt the urge to allow her art and herself to bloom unapologetically. With the meeting still echoing in her mind, Jenna made her way back home, each step fueled by a mixture of enthusiasm and trepidation. The revelation that her art could authentically reflect her identity had left her both exhilarated and unnerved. She felt lighter, as if she had cast off chains she hadn't realized were binding her. Yet, the weight of expectations still loomed large, particularly the expectations of her father, which stirred a nostalgic unease within her. As she walked through the door of her small studio apartment, the comforting scent of paint and turpentine enveloped her like an old friend. She had created this space to be a reflection of her, yet it often felt more like a museum of unfulfilled potential than a sanctuary of creativity. The walls were adorned with half-finished canvases, each piece a testament to the battle between societal demand and personal authenticity. Sinking into her worn-out chair, Jenna stared at the blank canvas before her, a vast expanse waiting to be filled. Memories of her father's harsh critiques surfaced, his penetrating gaze analyzing every stroke, every brush of color she dared to apply. Would he even recognize this new direction? The nagging question still played at the back of her mind like a haunting tune. Was she brave enough to venture outside the box he had constructed for her? With a strength she hadn't anticipated, she grabbed her palette and squeezed bright hues onto it, her movements becoming increasingly frenetic. Each color was a mix of joy, sorrow, and uncertainty, and as her brush danced across the canvas, a story began to emerge. The vibrant splashes were infused with love, loss, and confrontation of her fears, shouting out to the world that she was finally stepping into her identity as an artist. Time slipped away as she painted not in the usual measured hours, but in a frenzy of creative wrath. The brush felt like an extension of her own emotions, and for once, she allowed herself to celebrate not having a perfect piece, but a piece that was altogether her own. But as she stepped back to examine her work, her breath hitched. The colors were bold, but somewhere within the chaos, she could also see shadows creeping in. They whispered a self-doubt, reminding her of the vulnerability she had just begun to embrace. Could she truly reconcile this painting with the legacy her father left? There was still a fear deep inside her that haunted her steps, a fear of failing to be seen or understood. Jenna grabbed her phone and texted Taylor, "I'm starting to create something, but the fear of my father's opinion is creeping back in. What if he doesn't see me?" The reply was quick. "You've got to remember, this is your voice now, Jenna. Don't cage it. Just keep pouring it out." Her heart leapt at the encouragement, but then sank at the thought of her father's judgment hindering her progress. It was as though she was caught between two realms, the safe, predictable order he loved, and the expressive, chaotic world she was yearning to explore. As night fell, Jenna felt the need for clarity. She needed something tangible to squelch the rising tide of anxiety. She reached for the notebook she kept at her side, filled with fragmented dreams and ideas. But rather than pouring her fears onto the page, she dared to write a letter to her father, something she had long avoided. An acknowledgement of their shared legacy and a heartfelt articulation of her struggle. It was a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm between their expectations. Pen trembling, Jenna wrote, "I've been navigating this journey with your shadows looming over me, refusing to see my own light." Each word felt like a release, igniting a small flicker of resolve within. As she finished, she realized this letter might not be meant to send, but instead, a cathartic consolidating of her thoughts. Pushing herself away from the table, she glanced at her canvas again, now shimmering under the dim light of her studio, calling out for completion. There was fear, yes, but there was also clarity battling for dominance. Would she let the shadows win, or illuminate her own truths amidst the darkness? As the clock ticked on, a new sense of purpose gripped her heart. She would face this challenge head-on, even if it meant confronting her father's legacy head-on. And then, an idea burst forth. What if she showcased her art in a real exhibition? It could be the ultimate test of her courage. The thought left her breathless, both terrified and exhilarated. The moment of commitment was near, but first, could she steady her hands long enough to pour out her fear and ambition onto the canvas once more? The next steps felt monumental, but as she dipped her brush and paint again, Jenna knew she was ready. She would create art that honored both her father and herself. Would this journey open doors she never thought possible, or would it shatter everything she had known? Jenna woke up that morning with a resolute sense of purpose. The sun poured into her studio, illuminating the bright colors on the canvas that had become an extension of her thoughts, fears, and aspirations. Everything that had unfolded, the letters, the long talks with Taylor, and her rediscovery of art pushed her to embrace this moment fully. Today was the day she would take the plunge, showcasing her art at the gallery that honored her father's work. Walking into the gallery, Jenna's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the footsteps echoing off the bare walls. This was the space where she would merge her father's legacy with her newfound artistic identity. The scent of fresh paint wafted through the air, riotous colors gracing the walls in anticipation for the unveiling. She paused in front of a framed photo of her father, articulating myriad emotions she had long buried. Here in this space, his ghost seemed more like a companion than a haunting figure. With every passing moment, Jenna felt the weight of expectation pressing against her. The urge to retreat whispered loudly in her mind. Would her father approve of this new direction? But a fierce resolve stirred within her. This wasn't merely about his approval. It was about unlocking the voice she had claimed for herself. She would honor him, yes, but she would also step boldly into her own narrative. As the opening crowd began to gather, Jenna felt a surge of anxiety. There was her father's legacy and expectation of perfection threatening to close in. And then there were the messages of acceptance she had crafted over the past weeks with Taylor, murmuring reassurance. In a moment of clarity, she thought of the letters she uncovered, the truths her father had bravely faced in written form. This was her moment to confront her own truth. The event began, and one by one, attendees strolled past her canvas, pausing to reflect on the depths of emotion that radiated from the work. Her piece of vibrant symphony of colors depicting intertwined narratives merged her personal struggles with her father's unfulfilled dreams. It became a tapestry, a story of triumph in imperfection. As the murmurs of admiration floated through the air, she felt an exhilarating sense of validation she hadn't anticipated. For the first time, "I see light and shadow coexisting," an art critic exclaimed, his gaze locked onto her work. "This piece speaks to both pain and hope. You've created something truly unique." Jenna's spine straightened. This was more than mere praise. It was external recognition of her transformation, the tangible proof of her growth. Amidst the vibrant conversations buzzing around her, The walls of her past felt like they had finally started to crumble. She watched as individuals connected deeply with her work and began sharing their interpretations and stories, echoing the depths that her father had always sought but never fully revealed. Later that night, in a quieter moment, Jenna received a message from Taylor, who had been there throughout the evening, intentionally supportive. "Jenna, your art is more than just a representation of you, it's a conversation starter, a piece that gives others permission to explore their narratives." That message pierced through Jenna's heart, illuminating a path she hadn't yet considered: the power of vulnerability. No longer did she feel bound solely by her father's expectations. Instead, she found herself expanding, intertwining her story with those of others. As the night deepened, Jenna stood before her canvas, reflecting on the strides she had made. This wasn't just about artistic expression, it was a testament to her evolution. She had deconstructed her own limitations and rebuilt her identity through painstaking exploration, transforming fears into bridges toward connection. Today, she had solidified her place not only as an artist in her own right, but as a storyteller reflecting the true essence of both herself and her father. In this new role, she had conquered the silent chains of resentment that bound her. The words she had once feared failure, judgment, and loss no longer held sway. The rebirth of her creative spirit was palpable, igniting a flame of confidence that filled every corner of her being. Jenna realized she was capable of validating her father's legacy while embracing her own artistic voice. There, that night, amidst the vibrant sounds of affirmation and connection, she stepped into the realm of what it meant to be wholly herself, a resilient artist unafraid to dance in shades of light and dark. Her heart soared. She had achieved not just recognition as an artist, but a profound understanding of her voice and vision. With steady conviction, she knew she wouldn't stop here. Tomorrow, she would reach out, mentor others, and share her journey, even the darkest parts, for the world to see. This was Jenna's moment. She had unlocked doors to the depths of her potential. The shadows of her past no longer dictated her future. She had become the vibrant architect of her dreams. Now it was time for you to step into your journey of transformation. You need to subscribe now to catch more emotional stories that drive personal growth, just like Jenna's. Don't wait even one more second to share your thoughts or reactions. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and help us share these narratives with more seekers out there. Comment your theories on Jenna's evolution and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who are longing for their epiphanies. Your support matters in this journey.